ETFs crash. Real estate's going to crash. And this is going to crash, the US dollar. 1964, President Johnson took the dollar, or put the silver dollar, and made it fake silver dollars and dimes and quarters. So that's why the American coins have the copper tinge around it. It's called, fake money. But what's happening is that the BRICS nation are coming, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now Saudi Arabia coming after us. What's happening is that in 2017, the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, made gold Tier 1 asset. See, up until then, the U.S. Treasury was Tier 1 assets. So the whole world is filled with U.S. treasuries and bonds. And as you and I have talked over the years, I don't like treasuries and bonds, and because they're fake. So what's going to happen is when they keep raising interest rates, those treasuries they're becoming worthless. Let's say you have a treasury at 5% or a bond at 5%, and the interest rates go to 10%. It'll collapse the system. So like Japan, which has had quantitative easing for years and years and years and years now, is filled with U.S. treasuries. So is China. So is the Fed. And so what just started to happen, a few months, 2017 again, there was a reverse repo. And a reverse repo was what happened just before 2008 in America. And a reverse repo is very simply this, is what happens is the Fed will give money to, let's say, a Tier 1 bank, like, let's say, Bank of America. A reverse repo is this. So if a Fed gives money to Bank of America, that's called a repo. So they're backing up Bank of America. A reverse repo is Bank of America and all the Tier 1 banks give it back to the Fed. They don't want the money. They don't want the bond. And it's not they don't want the bond. When they give the money, when the bank, let's say Bank of America, gives the money back to the Fed, that's saying we don't want to lend money anymore because it's an indictment. Andy Schectman says this. He says it's an indictment of the U.S. economy. We're going down. Now, if that goes down, they keep raising interest rates, all those bonds will crash because, who wants a 5% bond when you get a 10% bond? And the rumor is, this is according to Andy Schectman, the long shot is this: Japan may join the BRICS. And what will happen is that instead of a bailout, bailout's what happened with Lehman Brothers in 2008. And so the taxpayer gave money to Lehman Brothers. What will happen is this: there'll be a bail-in, which happened in Cyprus in 2008, is Bank of America, when they give all those treasuries back or the bonds back to the Fed, people will run on Bank of America, and Bank of America will say, so you and I go to the bank and say, we want our money back, we want our savings back. And Bank of America says, our door is shut because there's a run on the bank. But guess what? Instead of your cash or your savings, we'll give you back stock in Bank of America. That's a bail-in. Now, I hope it doesn't happen, but that's what I was writing about. So as you know, I'm a huge gold, silver nut, and I would rather have silver right now, which is the biggest bargain in world history today. Real estate was my generation's investment because it was dead. For your generation, it's silver, because right today in America, it's cost me $30 to buy a silver eagle. $30. This stuff is trash. This is trash here. Cash is trash. So that's a bail-in, bail-out. That's what happens. You have a repo and a reverse repo. So the reverse repo is the banks are giving back the money to the Fed. We don't want it.
You wrote in your book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, many interesting things. One of the quotes that I jotted down: the primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage fear. There's a lot to be fearful of in this world today. Can you name a few of the biggest risks that we face as citizens of the world, and how do we manage our fear of what's coming up?
Well, the fear is when you have so many people, all over the world who went to school and drank this Kool-Aid. Go to school. This is my Poor Dad, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is my book. Still #1 in the world after 26 years, by Publishers Weekly, not me. So what happens? You go to school, get a job, work hard, pay taxes, save money, buy a house because your house is an asset, get out of debt, and put your money in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. Worst financial advice possible. But that Kool-Aid is swinging around all of our heads who went to school. And so the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad that was a song of my poor dad. My poor dad was a PhD. Go to school, get a job, work hard, get good grades, work hard, save money, get out of debt, buy a house. Pay your taxes, save money, and then invest in the stock market. I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, the Fed, this guy Powell, just announced yesterday, he's going to raise interest rates again. So what that's going to do is Andy Schechtman says this is called the 3 times crash. All paper assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, crash. Real estate's going to crash. And this is going to crash, the US dollar. So far, David, all the years you've interviewed me, I'm a freaking gold and silver bug, as you know, and not ETFs. I am hard assets. Hard assets. This is my gold mine here. I just took it public this year, July 2022, on the New York Stock Exchange. You can go to my website and see me ringing the bell. It's the richest gold mine in America. It's in Utah, right in Provo, Utah. I'm not Mormon, but it's right in Utah.
There wasn't this period of inflation that we are seeing today. How do you feel about inflation? Because that is a key factor in personal finance. We have to plan for our wealth being eroded year after year if inflation persists. Do you think inflation is going to persist, or do you think it's going to continue coming down?
I think it's here to stay for a while. And the reason is, it's not that they printed, trillions after COVID. But the real reason is what was the first act that Communist Joe Biden did? His first act was he cut off the Keystone XL pipeline from Canada to America. And I sell oil. I used to be an oil tanker officer for Standard Oil. I don't touch paper assets. I don't touch stocks, bonds. I wouldn't buy an Exxon stock. I wouldn't buy Standard Oil stock or Chevron, whatever they call it now. I buy the physical oil. And my oil wells are in Dakota, North Dakota, Louisiana, and Texas. And so I was selling oil. Biden comes to office. My friend Donald Trump, Trump and I have written 2 books together. He's a good friend of mine. And what happened is when Biden took office, his first act was to cut off the Keystone XL pipeline, again, running from Alberta to America. I was selling oil down that day for $30 a barrel on the spot exchange, as you know. That day went to $130 a barrel. When that happened, I knew what Biden was up to, or the communists are up to. By the way, this is one of the first books I read at school. It's called The Communist Manifesto. I read this in 1965, going to the Academy in New York. Anyway, as soon as Biden cut off the Keystone, oil went from 30 to 130 a barrel. Immediately, I knew what he was doing. They're crushing the poor middle class. So this is the irony of it, David. Guys like me get richer. So, you sell oil from $30, all of a sudden get $130. I almost voted for Biden after that one. I said, thank you, Joe. But then I realized what he's doing, he's going to crush the poor and middle class, and that sets us up for revolution, David.